Jack was a very poor young man living in a dusty small town in the American Midwest. He had no money, no family, and no hope of ever getting married. One day, desperate and lonely, he shaped a bride out of clay with his own hands. He dressed her in a beautiful red wedding dress, placed a white veil over her head, sat her in the back of his old pickup truck, and began driving through the town square. "3 days from now is my wedding," he shouted cheerfully. "Y'all are invited to the big barbecue feast." The townsfolk, especially his neighbor Sheila, stared in shock. Where had this bride suddenly come from? No one had ever seen her before. 3 days later, the whole town showed up for the wedding feast. Long tables were set up in the community park with whatever food Jack could borrow or scrape together. When nosy old Mrs. Kamla reached to lift the bride's veil, Jack jumped forward and yelled, "Don't touch her. My bride is real shy." Mrs. Kamla grew suspicious. "Is this some kind of store mannequin?" she whispered to the others. But no one dared say anything out loud. The feast ended, guests left gifts and small envelopes of cash as wedding blessings, and everyone went home puzzled. Alone at last, Jack happily counted the money and gifts he had collected. Suddenly, a soft voice behind him said, "Hey, Jack, want some help counting that cash?" Jack spun around in terror. The clay figure was gone. In its place stood a beautiful young woman, smiling gently. "Don't be scared," she said. "I won't hurt you. My name is Annie. 10 years ago, you saved my life." Memories flooded back to Jack. One brutal winter up in the mountains, he had found a trapped wild sow, half frozen and starving. He had fed her, nursed her back to health, and then set her free. Annie continued, "I work up in those mountains, herding cattle and tending the land. I never forgot your kindness. If you're willing, we can spend our lives together." Jack, overjoyed, agreed in a heartbeat. The two of them opened a small butcher shop in the town market. Annie called out to customers in her sweet, melodic voice, while Jack worked fast and skillfully with his knife. Their little business took off, and soon they were happier than Jack had ever imagined possible. But a few years later, a terrible drought hit the region. Crops turned to dust. Wells and creeks ran bone dry. Folks started packing up and leaving for greener pastures. Jack and Annie's shop suffered. There were no cattle left to butcher, and no customers with money to spend. One evening, as they sat worried in their empty shop, Annie said quietly, "Jack, there's something I need to tell you. I'm not exactly what I seem." Jack looked at her, confused. "Remember the sow you saved?" she asked. "That was me. I'm a spirit of the mountains, a guardian who can take the form of animals or people. I took human form to repay your kindness. But now the mountain itself is dying from this drought. If the land dies, I'll lose my strength, and I may have to return to the hills forever." Jack's heart sank. "Ain't there anything we can do?" "There's one chance," Annie replied. "Deep in the forbidden cave behind the highest peak, there's an ancient spring sealed by a stone slab. Legend says only someone who's shown true selfless kindness can open it. If that spring is freed, water will flow again and save the land. But the trail is deadly, and nobody's ever come back from that cave." Without a second thought, Jack said, "Then I'm going." Annie tried to stop him. "It's too dangerous. You might not make it back." Jack smiled. "I once saved a helpless creature without expecting a thing in return. Now that creature's my wife, and the land that gave her to me is dying. How could I not try?" The next morning, Jack headed out with a small pack of jerky and his old hunting knife. Annie watched him disappear into the hills, tears in her eyes. The journey was brutal: blazing sun, cracked earth, sheer climbs. When he finally reached the forbidden cave, darkness swallowed him whole. Inside, he faced visions of riches, fear, and doubt, but he kept going, thinking only of Annie and the town. At the heart of the cave, he found the stone slab covering the spring. Ancient words were carved into it: "Only a pure heart may lift this burden." Jack put his hands on the stone and pushed with everything he had. Slowly, it moved. Clear, cold water burst forth, filling the cave and rushing down the mountain like a brand new river. When Jack staggered out, exhausted but alive, he saw green shoots already pushing up along the water's path. The drought was broken. That evening, he made it home. Annie ran to him, laughing and crying all at once. "You saved us all," she whispered. The town came back to life. Crops grew tall again, wells filled, cattle returned. Jack and Annie's butcher shop thrived more than ever. And from that day on, whenever folks in the town talked about true kindness, they told the story of poor Jack, who made a bride from clay, married a mountain spirit, and brought water back to a dying land. They lived happily, not just for one lifetime, but through many seasons of rain and plenty that followed.